This week on Motor Week, Ginny Buckley tests Seat's new Leon in Spain. Chris Goffey gets his hands on Rover's new small car at its launch in Shropshire. We bring you important news from Audi, and Ian Royal takes a spin in their TT. But first, Richard Hammond tests two very different cars of the same price to see which one he would like to take home.
Two cars, one a small hatch, the other a small race car developed for the road. An odd choice to test together, you might think. What have they got in common? Well, quite a lot. For a start, they both cost about 13 grand. They're both built with driving in mind. But this is the Citroen Saxo VTS. It's a compromise. It offers practicality and drivability. Caterham Super 7 Sprint offers no practicality, no compromise. It's just about driving. So we want to find out, is it worth sacrificing the practicality of the Citroen for the excitement of the Caterham? So which one first? It's got to be the Caterham. And straight away, there's no mistaking this car's purpose. In a tiny little cockpit, we've got two deep bucket seats, very narrow. We've got a full 4-point race harness, which is a fiddle to get on, minimal dials, and that's it. No creature comforts whatsoever, and a little tiny Momo steering wheel. And it's not the easiest thing to get into or out of. Well, it's got an alarm, which is good in a car with no roof, but it's not the easiest thing to find where the keys are, located under the dash, but we've done it. So we'll fire it up, you hear the fuel pump clicking away. But first, release the handbrake under here. We're ready for liftoff. In actual fact, Caterham can supply you with one of these direct from the factory for just a shade under 11 grand. But to be honest, I think to spec it up to anything like a livable standard, you're going to be spending about 13. You can go mad and spend 20 grand on something that'll easily beat a Ferrari. Cramped isn't the word in here. It's unbelievable. This thing is tiny. I'm a small guy. You should have seen us wrestling the cameraman in here. Getting him out is going to be even more fun. This is absolutely back to basics. I feel like Biggles in a car. Hello? And the old Roadster. There is not a single frill on this car. Everything is basic and functional. And the controls are incredible. The steering is faster than I can believe. With a tiny little steering wheel, it's accentuated. Before you know what's happening, you really are disappearing up your own what's-it. Everything you need is here, even a little tiny indicator. It works, but again, it's pretty functional. This is the most basic version. It's the Classic or the Sprint, so it's a little tiny 1.6 8-valve K-Series engine, but that is more than enough. The car weighs about half a ton, which really is nothing. That makes for blistering performance. We're not talking high-tech Japanese-style manufacturing here. We're talking about enormous fun in a little tiny lightweight package. Even down to the steel wheels, it's the basic specification, no fancy alloys here. There's no doubting it is enormous fun, but any car that you can't even get out of without a set procedure. I'm only a small guy. For 6-footers, it's impossible to wrestle your way around. Practical, no. And as for the procedure for getting into our more sensible little sporting friend, Citroen Saxo, well, it consists of this, and then this. Well, this is completely different. It's a car for a start. You're sat inside a hot hatch, but in fact, apart from the nice blue dials, you wouldn't really know there was anything hot about it at all. You just sat in an ordinary car. It's not until you mash the right pedal do you realise this thing is very fast indeed. Front-wheel drive, so it's a totally different experience, and it is extremely quick. It's typical hot hatchery in here. All the power going to the front wheels. They're only too ready to brake traction and spin. It goes around corners incredibly quickly. Unlike the Caterham, it takes minimal effort. In the case of the 7, you get back what you put in. It's rear-wheel driven, it feels raw and basic. This feels as comfortable as any other hatchback. It just happens to go very quickly. If you have to ask why the Caterham is a more rewarding driver's car when this thing is easier to drive and half the time it's probably faster anyway, you'll never appreciate it. This is a compromise, and you're aware of that all the time. Having said that, it's a car that you can drive very, very fast, very, very easily. The main difference is we can go at great speed, but I've got my shopping in here. There's massive amount of room. It's a typical hatch. Convenient, everything to hand, a nice size, you can see out clearly. and it's warm and dry. So decision time, what do I go for? They both cost about the same. Do I choose Citroen Saxo VTS with its optimum compromise between driving pleasure and practicality, or the no frills, no compromises Caterham? Well, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool motoring enthusiast and I'm a bit of a hard man. I don't mind the wind in the hair, but then I have got to go to London and it is an awful long way. It's the Citroen.
Audi has announced a recall on the TT Coupe Quattro, following reports received from some German customers. They've called into question the handling characteristics of their vehicles, although we're told that these are at speeds substantially in excess of legal speed limits in the UK. The comments have prompted Audi to make changes which affect both the car's suspension and the aerodynamic performance. Modified anti-roll bars are to be fitted front and rear, and will be combined with revised front suspension wishbones and firmer damper settings. In addition to these suspension modifications, the TT will also receive a rear spoiler. Audi hope that with the revised suspension settings and the rear spoiler, the TT's dynamic limits will be easier to forecast. As a result, drivers will find it easier to control in on-the-limit situations. The modified components will be fitted to production vehicles from December and will be available for retrofitting to existing cars in the UK from the beginning of the year 2000. As soon as parts are available, customers will be contacted and asked to return their cars to their local Audi centre, where the work will be carried out free of charge.
When some cars arrive in our office, they provoke a mad scramble from the young people who work there in an attempt to get their hands on the keys. And getting those keys back is the equivalent of prizing Paul Merson out of the bar at closing time. But when the news gets out that the latest is a Seat called Leon, you can bet it won't even raise a murmur. You know, I think the name might have something to do with it. I mean, Leon. What's all that about then? You wouldn't dream of calling a car Harry or Fred now, would you? Volkswagen tried it with the Chiron and that didn't work either. I don't know what this name thing is all about, but they've got to do better than that. The Leon is a cross between a hatchback and a coupe, and although there aren't any real distinctive modern lines suggesting anything new or different for Seat, it does have a rather nice muscular rear end. A hint of the sportiness this car offers can be seen in the rear spoiler and the way the number plate is moulded into the bumper. The Leon 4 is unusual because it's the fastest car in its class in production. It produces a whopping 180 brake horsepower, has a 6-speed gearbox and a 4-wheel drive system. What, those three on this little thing? That's got your attention, hasn't it? The Leon comes with a wide range of engines. In total there are 7 options, 3 direct injection diesels, 4 petrol versions, and there's even an automatic. There are a ridiculously wide range of options available from Seat, including of course the engine versions. There are 3 finishes: Stella, which is the well-equipped base model, Signo, which has even more electric gadgets and an onboard computer, air conditioning and an upgraded stereo, and Sport, which has the lowered chassis, more electronics, big fat alloy wheels and sport seats. Inside you'll see that Seat have decided understatement is definitely the name of the game. And a Leon may promise to be a rather thrilling drive, but the sportiest thing you'll find in here, I've got to say, is the seats. The rest of it is a bit dull and a bit bland. But having said that, everything is very well laid out and the quality is absolutely superb. You can really see just how far Seat have come since they've been part of the good old Volkswagen Group. And believe me, it really does feel very quick indeed. It's absolutely great fun to drive. The engine is very responsive and it simply begs you to put your foot down. But when you do that, there is an awful lot of power going through those wheels. Now the key is the Haldex rear wheel system, which electronically measures the amount of torque distributed to the rear wheels and then connects both axles depending on the driving conditions, which, now wait for it, are measured electronically by engine sensors, wheel sensors and bodywork sensors. Now you can expect to see the Seat Leon at your local dealers in the spring. The entry-level model will cost just under 13 grand, while this one, the Leon 4, will set you back £17,995. There are a combination of 14 colours and 3 interior finishes available, and other options are just what you'd expect from any major manufacturer. Seat seem to produce 2 different types of cars: practical, well-made runarounds that are excellent value for money, or fun-packed, sporty little numbers that get their genes from Seat's rally cars. So which one of those 2 groups does the Leon 4 fit into? Well, it's a bit of an oddity really. It manages to combine all of those characteristics, which is a very good thing. I just know which side of it I prefer.
Coming up after the break, Chris Goffey tests the VVC version of Rover's new 25, and Ian Royal takes a spin in the Audi TT.
You. Do you know that bad girls go to hell?
When Rover launched the 200 in 1995, I remember having a stand-up row with a marketing executive who said it wasn't a Super Mini, it was a hatchback to compete with the Golf and the Astra, but it's just not big enough, we said. No nonsense, they said. When people see the quality of the interior and the equipment we've built into the car, they won't worry about a few inches in the back. Well, of course, people did worry about the size, and more importantly, they did worry about the price Rover wanted for the car. Well, now there's the new 200, renamed the 25 to fit in with the Rover 75, 45, 25 range. New front end, new headlamps, new bumpers, new grille, but more importantly, a new attitude to the car from Rover themselves, because they now accept it's got to compete with the Polo and the Fiesta. So it now becomes one of the biggest cars in its sector, significantly with the biggest boot. 25 comes with either 3-door or 5-door body shells. This is the 3-door VVC, the hot car of the range. Rover are anxious to push the sporting nature of the 25, and this is the quickest model in the range, the VVC. The engine puts out 145 PS. It's the same as the quickest engine in the MGF. The tight suspension and damper settings of this sporting variant have been carried over to all models in the range, sharpening up the handling of the 25. If you're familiar with the 200, then things won't look too different in here, but there's new seats which are very supportive and comfortable, new fabrics, new door trims, some plastic wood trim, and in this VVC, even some fake carbon fibre. You can't really call this a new car. After all, it's a reworking of a model that's coming up for its 5th birthday. But as an indication for the way ahead for Rover, the structuring of the model range, the marketing approach, it's very significant. For once, this is a car that lives up to the marketing hype. The VVC is very, very cool.
Amongst the many cars that I've driven, none, not even the supercars, have been so drop-dead gorgeous, so stunning, such a crowd puller as this, the new Audi TT. Now, if Citroen can use a supermodel like Claudia Schiffer to advertise a mundane Zara, imagine the stunner that Audi would have to come up with to advertise this TT. It's a car I've waited a long time to drive, the excitement of waiting for it to arrive, that first blast down your favourite country lane. And when it's parked up, the sort of crowds it attracts to take a good look is amazing. Very few cars elicit that sort of respect these days. But, and I'm afraid that there is a but, despite its stunning looks, this 180 brake horsepower TT is not quite the car that you'd hoped for in terms of driving performance. Now, I've driven it every day for the past week. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad car, but there are one or two minus points. The power plant is my main gripe about the car. This is the same 1.8 turbocharged engine that Audi use in the A3, but with more power in this case, 180 brake horsepower. And unfortunately, it just doesn't feel that quick on the road. Sure, if you came from a less powerful car into this one, you'd be happy, but come from a similarly powered car, and I think you'd be rather disappointed. There will be two versions though, this and the 225 brake horsepower version available soon. The TT shares the same platform as the VW Golf, the Audi A3 and even the Skoda Octavia. It's all part of the VW Group's vision for the years ahead. But at the end of the day, you don't notice any of that, so I can't see any drawbacks. The TT has stayed virtually the same design as the original concept shown at the 1995 Frankfurt show. Very little cars manage that, and it's testament to Audi's foresight and courage. Next in the range is the TT Roadster 2-seater, probably available early 2000. My impressions of the TT to drive are on the whole very good, apart from this particular model just being a little underpowered. There's no kick in the back acceleration, it doesn't exactly roar away from the lights, but it feels a superbly poised car to drive when you push it hard and have a bit of fun. It does feel very safe and secure, of course thanks to Audi's four-wheel drive Quattro system. It corners and handles superbly. You'd be hard-pressed to get this car out of shape, but of course you can't defy the laws of physics. Push any car hard and be silly in it, and you'll probably end up in the bushes. Now, our test car doesn't seem to be running quite as smoothly as we would have hoped. There seems to be a little hesitation and accelerating as if something's missing slightly. Also have to say that the gearbox of the TT is not as slick and as smooth as we've come to expect from Audis. It's rather notchy going across the gate, particularly the shift from first to second, which makes no fun in accelerating hard. The brakes are excellent, the steering is nicely weighted with just the right amount of feel. Inside the cabin, it's very, very well equipped with, well, we've got electric windows, a quality stereo system, climate control, heated seats, adjustable steering wheel, and leather seats all as standard. In fact, there's very little that you can add as an extra on this particular 180 brake horsepower model. Now, I'm 6 foot, and I suspect that anybody over about 6'1", 6'2" may find the interior a bit cramped and a bit claustrophobic. Also, it's got two occasional rear seats in the back. That's the best way to describe them, occasional. My 6-year-old son had a short journey in one of those back seats at the weekend, which was okay, but not ideal for long journeys. So, if you wanted a TT, well, the news is that the wait from your local Audi dealer could be anything up to 10 months. The order banks are full. Don't worry though, residual values when they start coming through on the used market should be absolutely excellent. This TT has no real direct rival to pit it up against. It's great fun to drive, it's tremendous value for money, and believe me, you'll be the envy of your neighbours. But my advice would be to wait for the 225 brake horsepower version of the TT. That should be a real beauty, or of course, the TT Roadster when that comes out. But like it a lot.
Now here is a piece of history. Here's something that you can track back to the war, wartime necessity, right up to the hulking great 4x4s that come from Japan now and that we can see taking kids to school all over the world. Back then in the war, the need was there for a lightweight general purpose vehicle. General purpose, GP, that's where the name Jeep came from. The necessity was that it had to be able to be carried by 4 blokes, and it can be, there's handles to prove it. It had to be as agricultural and as basic as you could possibly make a car. And it is. And that's how the whole shape came about, the high mudguards. There's no curve on the mudguards. Every single part of it is as simple to make and to repair as is humanly possible. But of course that shape became an icon, really, that influenced subsequent off-roaders through generations and generations and generations. And it all started here, the Willis Jeep, the answer to that need. And it's fantastic. Now, a friend of mine had one of these, and it's a nightmare. 55 miles an hour is absolutely the most you can possibly expect, and keeping it going in a straight line is going to be next to impossible. But what an important, influential vehicle. Apart from its role in the war, the cars that followed on from this, in their millions, it's great. And also you can do this. I've always wanted to do this. Whoop! Well, you know. That's it, really.
Coming up on next week's show, Richard Hammond tests the BMW M Coupe. Ken Gibson squeezes into a tiny little city car from France, the microcar. And Ian Royal tests Ford's new Fiesta at its launch. All that next week on Motor Week.